All right. It's exactly 13 o'clock UTC, so we may now start this session for today. So, first of all, thank you very much for joining us in our very first webinar series for inclusive outreach. So, again, welcome to our very first inclusive outreach subgroup webinar. And we are planning to have this kind of webinar quarterly for us to have a platform where outreach volunteers and practitioners can share best practices and tools for astronomy outreach. And this webinar series or the community of practice series is to provide a forum for IAU members, astronomy outreach practitioners, amateur astronomers to showcase their projects, innovations, and activities for astronomy outreach. And this is also to provide a platform for cross collaborations between teams of IAU sub-working groups, educators, and astronomy outreach practitioners. So we would like to have this webinar. So this is a very informal webinar. It's just we would want people to share your experiences in doing astronomy outreach. All right, so I think a lot are still joining us. So welcome again, welcome everyone. Um, a few reminders before we start our session for today. Please keep yourselves muted while presentations are ongoing. So we will mute people who are unmuted while presentations are ongoing. So the presenters can only unmute themselves. So they are the only people who can unmute themselves. Um, all right. So okay. So welcome again. And then first of all, we will have an opening remarks by Lina and then Cesare. Unfortunately, Lina can't join us today, but she provided us a video for her opening remarks.
Hi everyone, my name is Lina Canas and I am the director of the IAU Office for Astronomy Outreach. I want to first thank Cesare and Christine and all the IAU Inclusive Outreach team members for having me here today, and I apologize for not being able to be here live. Nevertheless, I wouldn't want to miss this opportunity to be here today and in this first edition of this webinar series and have a chance to talk a little bit about the IAU outreach programs and the importance of inclusion across the work that we carry in our office. First, I wanted to start by highlighting our motto, astronomy for everyone. That does encapsulate our vision of taking astronomy to all, of making astronomy accessible to all, and that is quite ambitious, to say the least, and that we are well aware of that, that it's this pursuit of taking astronomy to all. And for that, we do need to have a clear focus, a clear scope, and a good planning on how we do this. And that this has to be a collaborative effort that is supported continuously. And that's where the sub-working group on inclusive outreach and its members and their continuous efforts on bringing the community together and sharing these best practices on inclusive outreach, and most of all the role of supporting us, outreach practitioners, science communicators, helping us and finding ways to improve our initiatives and how to become more inclusive in our practices. This is the paramount role of this sub-working group, and that initiatives, for instance, such as these webinar series, are essential for us and for our community. But as I mentioned, I wanted to take this opportunity to give you a little overview of our office and what we do and our relation to inclusion. Again, as I mentioned, the astronomy for everyone is our motto, and we do this through access, communication, and international cooperation in trying to implement our core goal under the IAU strategic plan, in which the IAU engages the public in astronomy through access to astronomical information and communication of the science of astronomy. How do we do this? We do this through our IAU national outreach coordinators, that is composed by professional astronomers, amateur astronomers, outreach professional, educators, and through our outreach global projects. I can give you some examples of such as Dark and Quiet Skies Awareness, Telescopes for All, 100 Hours of Astronomy. These are a few of our projects. And of course, women and girls in astronomy. But there are some initiatives that we call our programs, our core programs, initiatives that should be present across all our projects. One of these initiatives is Inspiring Stars, that is focused on inclusion and diversity, but it's paired with numerous other initiatives, women and girls in astronomy, trying to continuously engage women and girls into astronomy. Language can be a barrier, so we do have in place a network of translators to support the translation initiatives in astronomy and to provide access to professional astronomers into bridging them to the different outreach initiatives across our programs. Inspiring Stars, as I mentioned, is our inclusion initiative or program that started back in 2019 during 100 Hours of Astronomy, and which legacy continues on through our sub-working group that Cesare leads. When we first started, we wanted to provide or to showcase in an international exhibition, to aggregate the best practices and resources around the world in terms of inclusive, not only outreach, but at research level, the tools and best practices, aggregate them into an itinerant exhibition. As I mentioned, this lives on into the working group, and the sub-working group tries to overcome or to support one of the needs that we found many years back, way before Inspiring Stars, in which we identified that our community struggle with numerous aspects, struggle to find support in providing inclusive activities and inclusive programs in a sustainable way, sustainable programs, struggle with feelings of insecurity because they were not professionally trained in doing this inclusive aspect and how to act more inclusively. And they struggle to find a community to look to and to turn to for exchange of ideas, mostly. With this working group, we do find this a way to overcome all these struggles. And that's why I think this is, again, this collaboration is essential. And we thank you all for being here today. And that through this webinar series, we can provide this, this community in which we can turn to and exchange ideas and become more inclusive in our practices. Thank you all very much again for having me. And please keep in touch. Even though we are spread up around the world, we are one email away. So we are in touch. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great webinar. Thank you.
All right. So thank you for that, Lina. Unfortunately, again, she can't join us, but yeah, thank you. And then we have a lot of people now. So we are now 29. So for those who just joined, welcome again, everyone. So welcome to our very first webinar series. And I forgot to introduce myself actually. So I'm Christine Jane Atienza. I am your moderator for today. I'm also a member of this sub working group, and our next um, our next presenter who will give us our opening remarks is our leader in this subgroup. So let's welcome Cesare Pagano for the welcoming remarks for this webinar.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much. And hi, everyone. I will spend the next few minutes to introduce our working group and in some details what Christina and Lina already said. And by the way, I am an amateur astronomer based in Italy. I'm currently serving as the General Secretary of the National Association of Amateur Astronomers in Italy. And I'm also the coordinator of this great IAU Inclusive Outreach Inspiring Stars sub-work group. Okay, so moving forward, first of all, what do we mean by inclusive outreach? Inclusive outreach is about giving people with disabilities equal opportunities to access astronomy outreach resources. In fact, access to scientific culture is an important element of society. Therefore, this equal access for everyone is very important. It's a matter of democracy, we can say. And there are many individuals, associations, institutions who develop the skills, tools, and experiences on inclusive outreach around the globe. We are finding more and more as we reach out with our working group. Some were very creative, invented creative ways and tools to explain eclipses, Earth movements, constellations, and so on. So if all this experience and knowledge could be put together and made available to everyone, it would be an incredible asset for the global community. So this is what our working group is trying to do. So our sub-working group is one of the 8 that started in 2020 by the IAU Executive Committee Working Group Astronomy for Equity and Inclusion. It's a long-term program. It's not a project. It takes the heritage and continues the Inspiring Star successful project that started in 2019. And our very goal is to facilitate the development and broad adoption of astronomy inclusive outreach practices. After about 2 years of activity, we started this time in 2020. We have representation from 17 countries. It testifies how strongly the community of outreach practitioners around the world feels the importance of this topic. Now, let's go to the what is more practical, let's say. Among the other things that the group delivered, there is a set of resources to assist outreach practitioners to start with inclusive practices. One of these resources is a set of good practices. It's very concrete suggestions to guide through all phases, from the organization to the leading and implementing an event or an activity. There you can find things like how to choose and set up the room for an activity or a class with people with vision impairments, or how to drive the hand of a blind person for the tactile exploration of an object, how to prepare a session with the sign language interpreters, how to organize an observing session for people on wheelchair with the telescopes, and things like that. These are just examples. So it's very practical things. So these practical things, it's pretty much useful to be prepared and not to feel scared at the first experience, you know, the fear to fail. But it's also useful to people with experience because you know, it's a rather complete document that summarizes the experience of many people during various years. So another resource that is available, pretty practical, is a set of 3 basic activities: tactile constellations, star sizes, and a 5-meter rope that reproduces the solar system distances in scale. These are very simple models that can be built with a very low budget, in the order of a few tens of dollars mostly, and with simple manual skills, but there is still quite a bit of science that can be explained with them. They have been used successfully on the field for several years, and we chose them because they're a simple way to start. But there are many more resources available on our inclusion workgroup website. You can explore them and see what can be useful to you. Now, down to the webinar series. As Christine said, we are trying to make this periodic. It's only the first one was serious. The idea is to have it 3-4 times per year, and the structure is about 50-minute session where people who have experience can share their experience with others, with the goal to inspire, to make others copy their experience, to adapt, to expand, and to share back. So it's a community. So the key here is participation. So do ask questions during the webinar, also offline. We will leave contacts. We have the Facebook community group, via email, and so on. If you have done something similar, if you try what you see in the webinar, please let the community know. It's very useful. And also, if you like to present your experience in one of the next webinars, you are welcome to contact us. We will set up a form to submit session proposal for the next sessions. So we are a community with even participation. Now, last slide. What's next? You can stay in touch with us on Facebook. We have you can follow the Facebook page for inclusion, where we share news and information, and you can join our community Facebook group, where you can actively participate and contribute with ideas and questions. You can find the resources on the website, as I mentioned. And finally, you can ask for assistance as you build your experience with inclusive practices. One of our members, Mike Simmons, started an initiative called the Astronomy for Equity to create a community where experienced mentors will guide existing astronomy outreach groups in using the many resources available to start, including the blind and visually impaired in their programs. For now, this specific initiative is focusing on only the blind disability, but our group focuses on everything. So do reach out to us as needed. And you have all the contacts in this slide. So with this, I close my session. Thank you, and thank you, Christine, for the next session.
Wider conversation in some ways about.
All right. Thank you, Cesare. So, yeah, again, we would like to have you as presenters for next sessions for our webinar series. So, you may contact us if you have a presentation in mind, or if you want to collaborate with anyone here. So, um, let's move on to our first presenter. But before that, we would like to tell everyone that we will record this session so that we can share this on our Facebook page as well, if that's okay with you. So, all right. So, without further ado, let's move on to our first presenter. Uh, All right. So our first presenter is Exodus Chun-Long Sit. He's a National Astronomy Education Coordinator and NAIC of Hong Kong. And he is an international transmedia astronomer, popular science author, musician, and astrophotographer from Hong Kong. He is the National Astronomy Education Coordinator, Chair of Hong Kong, and Co-National Outreach Coordinator of the International Astronomical Union, with science communication and research on multiple disciplines such as sustainability, dark sky protection, space exploration, astronomy innovation, and astropreneurship, inclusive science, communication, and STEAM education. So, without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Exodus Chun-Long Sit.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. So it's so happy to share with you some experience about the inclusive astronomy and science communications, especially for special students with special education needs. So today I will have I'll share with you two projects which is related to special education on astronomy, because in our daily life as an educator and a school teacher, I'm trying to motivate my students and the general public, especially the youth advocates, that motivate them to engage in learning science and motivate them to promotes the importance of light sky protections, and more importantly, if they would be our future science communicator, would be really great to form a bigger community with more people to engage to provide different materials. So usually I'll think of providing different materials or to reframing astronomy into more possibilities. For example, we consider astronomy education in different angles. For example, we talk about the importance of the sustainabilities such as dark sky protections, uh, United Nations sustainability goals, energy rays, uh, natural preservation. There are different possibilities if we talk about the night sky protections. And more than that, more experiential experience. For example, stargazing, astrophotography, which is a really good opportunity to motivate students or people with special education need to explore the nature in their weekend or in the time that they are really not really stressed to relax themselves. So besides that, there are some theoretical science or for example, astrophysics or cosmologies, which will be familiar with some people uh, in undergraduate level or advanced level. So I will consider in three different angles, like starting with SEN, special education needs. There are some target audience conducting, for example, ADHD, AXD, and developmental dyslexia. So it's mostly focused to some people which might need some different incentive or different irritative different methods to motivate them to learn. For example, experiential learning, first STEAM education, or some practical approaches. And I will further elaborate in my following slides. So it's really important if we could understand their intention of learning. For example, how could we provide a sustaining attention for our target audience to have some chances to really engage in learning science, because traditionally ADHD, as a case in point, some of them might not be really able to focus for a long time to study science or computing a tasks with some mathematical calculations or physics. So we try out some different approaches. For example, mindfulness under stargazing, which is a really great chances for them to have a chances to relax under the light sky and having chances to have an internal exploration to understand the true self, and uh, and also a good time for them to really calm down and through the observation of the night sky and constellations and even the astronomical objects, they could know more about the reasons, and they might find out their goals of learning science. So it would be really encouraging. So it's really important to understand the intention and especially the escape behavior to understand how could we provide some STEAM education for C. For example, we have a really good conversation to understand the internal needs, the underlying concern, and we also need to be consistently providing science or uh, learning materials for different uh, methods. For example, for some practical DIY workshops, starting out some observational events or some outreach experience for them to have some chances to have some science communication to reach with different people. So lastly, which is related to the choice without option. So actually, we always wish to be motivative to motivate them to learn and to experience. So first project will be actually related to the multiple intelligence on astronomy. So we start some guidelines and menu, for example, uh, uh, which is related to linguistics. So some of them might be really good at storytelling or really good at performing themselves to have some chances to have some outreach with people. Uh, more ADHD participants might really willing to take part in as a role of the popular science advocates to have some sharing in social media or some on-site outreach talks or workshops. So it would be really encouraging to explore different possibilities and different angles of astronomy. So besides that, we talk about some logical, mathematical science. For example, some of them we could provide them with some digital learning through online media software. For example, the Stellarium or some digital software of image processing of astrophotography. So we wish to provide them to have a chances to understand, to apply the talent on data science or engineering, to take part in sharing or image processing of some deep sky objects. And we wish to let them to have a chances to explore the beauty of the night sky. And more than that, some of them might be really good at kinesthetic. So we tried out some outdoor activities, for example, stargazing camp, sidewalk astronomy, which might have a really good chances to as a people who are always living in a city which is really crowded, a lot of stressful atmosphere. It will be a really good chances to live out our comfort zone, to explore the nature and understand there are different possibilities under night sky, and it would be really good uh, to learn through teaching. So it's a really good chances to have an interaction with other people with common interests. So more than that, try to integrate astronomy with music. So it's actually inspired by Kepler's universal music. So it's actually uh, having some studies and research based on the harmony of the worlds, which actually a pieces that integrating mathematics, astronomy, and music. So we try to motivate people to listen to learn astronomy besides traditionally image or some theoretical talk. We try to integrate different sensory experience for listening, through music experience, or for emotional expressions, to have different chances to keep in touch with people with different needs or different interests about astronomy. So more than that, we try to explore some interpersonal or intrapersonal experience. We try to visualize the science research, especially science communication, to make it more willing for people to get in touch, or to let people to engage through multisensory experience. For example, music, photo, storytelling, or some popular science comics, or some cosplay, some cosplay experience, to let people to have some interesting understanding about science knowledge. And there are different angles that we could try it out for astronomy if we consider uh, everyone is unique, and we try to motivate them to learn, to experience through multiple intelligence based on customizing with different experience based on our target audience. So it might be really good to explore different angles and possibilities of astronomy. So to follow it, another project which is actually uh, more focusing on uh, educator or science communicator. So how could we uh, get to the people? How could we promote science to people with different possibilities? For example, we tried out some diversity learning. So we tried out different approaches. For example, visual learning, read and write learning, auditory learning, or kinesthetic learning. So it's actually trying out some we call the learner-centered approaches. Traditionally, if we try to promote astronomy, we always think of trying out some astronomical research with some data or some image visualizations. But we always easy to overlook the importance of how people understand, or how to raise their awareness, or how we arouse their interest on learning science or learning astronomy or night sky protection. So we try to reframing it to consider based on people's needs. So we try to customize our programs or our events uh, to try. It's actually a term we call the A/B testing. So we tried out different approaches and making adjustment based on the feedback and evaluation of our previous experience. So, for example, we tried out a public lecture. Traditionally, we discovered that especially our target audience with some special education needs, they are not really willing to not really able to have sustainable attention on it, because we always talk many phrases, and there are a lot of different sophisticated terms that they might not be really able to understand it instantly. So we try to simplify all the terms. We try to add more practical elements. For example, some DIY experience. Remember, there's a case. There's an experience in 2019, which is actually a celebration of moon landing 50. So we try to launch a series of workshops, a DIY workshops about making a paper model of the Apollo rockets. So we try to the Saturn V rockets. So we try to allow our target audience to engage, to learn by making some paper model or trying out some interactive discussion or interactive opportunities with people. So we try to think of the diversity learning, which is really effective because we trying out different opportunities and making adjustment based on our previous experience, because there's no universal lesson which is available to all people with different needs. So we really have to customize and to have some adjustment based on people's interests, based on the popular culture in the mainstream, or based on people's need, how they learn science, because we really wish that our target audience will be able to continue to explore science, especially to become a future lifelong learner in the future. So we try to motivate them to experience different opportunities. For example, uh, the self-direct learning, so they will be able to explore astronomy deeply, and from an amateur astronomer to be a science communicator, or even they could be a social influencer, key opportunity leader, or a social people who are willing to be advocates that promoting science. So the first approaches we tried out is visual learning. So it's actually inspired by traditional astronomical observation. So we have some observational events in observatories and some science museums. We try to gather people with common interests about astrophotography. So there are different uh, we form a community that to have some exchanging ideas about lunar photography, exchanging ideas about the latest discovery or latest photography about the deep sky objects DSO, and some lake life observations and gathering in Chinese community, and we tried out different sharing through visual learning, because image is actually a good chances to tell your story, to share your opportunities, and especially for our target audience, photo with different color would be sensitive to people with the understanding of science and astronomy. So we try to motivate them with different examples. For example, the lunar observations, sidewalk astronomy, stargazing with constellations, and a rover hunting. So visually, uh, people might really like astrophoto, and they are willing to share it in the social media and having more conversation about it. So another one I'm trying out is read and write learning. So it's actually uh, based on the citizen scientist project, and also we call the social innovation project. We based on the actual problems in our society, based on people's needs. We try to provide them with different material. For example, we translate some English materials into Cantonese or Chinese materials to let more people to understand. In the online platforms, we're trying out some data analysis on astrophysics. So we try to share some latest news about astronomy, and we try out some publications through a different media. We call it transmedia, which is actually trying out different media to get reach to people who are able to learn or to get in touch, to keep in touch with them, and to gather communities to have some conversations or engagement in advocacies. So the third one would be related to the auditory learning. So we're trying out because singing, for example, sing is one of the greatest uh, medium to allow people to memory some phrases or knowledge. For example, if we try to sing it out, we're able to memorize different. For example, I integrate. Recently, I've composed a pieces, a Cantonese pieces. Uh, Re-lyrics. So I changed the original lyrics of traditional canto pop music. So I integrate some constellations information about what we can see in our seasonal constellations. So what can we see in our night sky in different seasons or different times. So allowing people to sing it out, and I think it is a great chances and effective opportunities for our target audience, especially for students or children with special education needs, because they are really interesting about they're really interested in singing song or engaging in musical composition. So I think if they try to sing it out, they're actually memorizing astronomy, some message or some knowledge about astronomy. So trying out, it's actually a project we call the STEAM plus A at astronomy. So we try to let them to engage learning astronomy through arts, including space arts and astro music and some performing music. We call it sonat. So it's actually a performance in the general public. In the last year before during the COVID, and we're starting out some public performance on astro music compositions and lectures scientifically and including some scientific research and the latest discovery about um, astromusic. So collecting data from NASA research and regenerating into some music to visualize, to allow people who can listen to music and learning astronomy and to experience the changes of frequencies and to experience the underlying theory about astronomy and the latest discovery about the astrophysics and the astronautic explorations. So the melody of planetary motion is actually one of the pieces that's the series that's allowing people to listen the sun of different uh, planets in our solar system. So allowing people to it's actually composed integrating with elements of different moons of the moons, and also for example Jupiter include the latest discovery about the Jupiter mission and some features about Jupiter, the Great Red Spot, and the Jupiter's moon, integrating all these materials and generating into some music performance to let people to have a unique angle to experience and learn astronomy. So lastly, which is related to kinestical learning. So it's actually based on experiential learning. So people who will who is always memorable about hands-on experience because they try to build up a 3D model or trying out to learn by setting up telescope or to have some DIY design thinking workshops. For example, making a paper model, which is actually letting them to have some interactions with people in groups and also allow them to really uh, try it out and uh, also enjoy and engage in the experience of exploring astronomy. So I think it's another really good experience to allow people, especially SEN students, to have some chances to engage, to learn by making or to learning by doing. It's a great chances for them to explore different possibilities about astronomy, and they could share their works, their art pieces to more people and inspiring more people to engage and learn have a new angles about astronomy. So and this is my sharing, and uh, thank you for Christine.
All right, thank you, Exodus, for sharing a lot. Wow, that's a lot. So, if you want, if anyone who here wants to collaborate with Exodus, because there's a lot of projects in Hong Kong right now. So moving forward, by the way, we will have our question and answer portion after all the presentations are done. And so moving forward, so let's welcome Dr. Amelia Ortiz Gil. Dr. Amelia Ortiz Gil is an astronomer at the University of Valencia Astronomical Observatory in Spain, and she focuses her work in the topics of astronomy, outreach, and education, particularly in the development of resources and activities accessible to the public with special needs. She was awarded with Europlanet Prize for public engagement with planetary sciences in 2019 for her pioneering work in the development of tactile planetary 3D models for the blind and visually impaired. She has been the chair of the IAU's working group on astronomy for equity and inclusion, and contributed to the development of the IAU's Inspiring Stars exhibition. So, without further ado, let's welcome uh, Miss Amelia Ortiz Gil.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for having me today. And I will share my screen now here. Okay. So I will present to you today some of the activities that we have developed at the Astronomical Observatory of the University of Valencia during the last years, especially those related to publics or audiences with special needs. At the Astronomical Observatory, we have visits from schools, regular visits from schools, and some years back, we had a request from a special education school to make a visit to our observatory. So we had never done anything of the sort, and at first we thought, oh my, what are we going to do? And then we decided to take up the challenge, and we started co-creating the visit together with the teachers of these kids. So we put together a few resources for visit. First, we created two PowerPoint presentations. One was about the solar system, and we linked the images that we were showing in the presentation with physical stimuli. So, for example, when we were talking about the cold surface of Europa, Jupiter's satellite, we handed them balloons filled with cold water. Or when we were speaking about Venus, which is very hot, we were handing to them balloons filled with warm water. Or they put their hands into a sand bucket when we were speaking about dunes in Mars. Or we lightened some incense sticks to try to make them to recreate the smell that one could find in IAU if anybody were able to travel there. So in this way, we accomplished that our audience was relating directly to the images, not only by watching them, but also through some more physical stimuli like touch or smell. And after that, we created also, we showed them a presentation, which was very relaxing. They were very excited after the first presentation. So the second one was just a journey through the solar system from the sun, or starting with the solar system from the sun up to the very end of the universe, to the microwave background. And we accompanied these images with some very relaxing music, and the kids really enjoyed this too. We also had some hands-on activities for the kinesthetic multi-learning learning styles, as Exodus has told us. They were building cardboard sundials and constellations with glow-in-the-dark stars. These are two activities that we were already conducting with regular schools, and they thought that it would be good to have them with them too, and they really enjoyed them. We were launching water rockets. That is a classic in every astronomy activity. And we also played by imagining new constellations inside the inflatable planetarium. So other activities that, well, after this visit, we were able to organize further activities with other groups. And this one is with a group of older people with cognitive disabilities. It was an interactive talk about a journey to the moon. They were presented with different ways of reaching the moon. They were asked if we would be able to reach the moon by balloon or by a helicopter or by plane. And then they would discuss, well, could we or could we not? So, and at the end, to finish with a space rocket, of course. They were also, this activity was also accompanied by some hands-on work, which was to create a hanging mobile with objects around the Earth. So it was the Earth in the center, and then the moon and some artificial satellite and asteroids around and even the space shuttle around the Earth. And then in the astronomical, in the year 2009, we celebrated the International Year of Astronomy, and we developed a new set of inclusive activities for people with different disabilities. One of them was another interactive talk. It was about the life of the stars. We explained how the stars evolve based on their different initial masses. And the talk was developed in two parts with a break in the middle. During the break, the attendants would draw their ideas of what they had understood so far from the talk, and they would also go outside and see directly the nearest star to us, which is the sun. We also created an open source software for motor disabilities. You may know that people with motor disabilities, like Professor Stephen Hawking, they have a software, they have a computer attached to their wheelchair, which has a communication software they use to communicate with their carers and with the rest of the world. So we had the idea of creating a similar software that was useful for communication, but also to browse through astronomical contents. So this software had an interactive menu based on different icons, and these icons were highlighted in a different color sequentially. So when the icon that you want to select is highlighted, then it's enough to just press any key or do some subtle movement to select it. And then it would, this icon this link would take you to the web, to the page where you could see the image and some information about this particular astronomical object, or you could even have the text written out loud to you by the computer. We also discovered that 9 years before, the Osservatorio Astronomico of Padova, earlier, 9 years earlier, the Osservatorio Astronomico di Padova had produced an online astronomy book for the blind. So we asked them if we could translate it into Spanish and print it, and we distributed the copies among different libraries of blind associations. Then we developed also a planetarium show for the visually impaired. It had two main components. One was this half sphere that you can see on the screen with the constellations engraved. And the other key element was a soundtrack that was recorded in 7 channels. 5 of them contained the music and special effects that were associated to each one of the celestial objects that were explained in the script. And the idea was that the show was premiered at the Hemispheric in Valencia, which is something in between a planetarium and an IMAX cinema, which has 5 speakers distributed on the dome. So in this way, we could make that the associated sound effect, the sound effect associated to each constellation was heard as coming from the nearest position in the dome to the place where it was being projected in the projection. So this would give this gave the audience a sense of the distribution of the different objects on the dome, even if they could not see it. A few years later, we decided to create our first tactile globe. It was a tactile 3D moon, because we realized that many people thought that the moon was something flat. All the experience that they had so far was that the moon was, the tactile models that they had access to were always two-dimensional. So some people even believed that the moon was a flat disk hanging up in the sky. So we wanted to translate the visual impression of the moon into a tactile experience. Therefore, it's not a topographical model, it's a visual one. And by that, I mean that, for example, the rays of the craters are in the model, they have some relief, but in reality they don't. So that would be the main difference. This is the final version of the globe. We made some kind of legend or code in which we assigned a letter in the Braille alphabet to each of the main features of the moon. And then we produced an accompanying document where you could find the corresponding name of the feature linked to each of the letters. So we glued these letters in Braille to the model, and then we created this Braille document in order to allow the blind users to explore the model for themselves. We didn't want them to be dependent on somebody else explaining them, oh, well, yeah, that's Mare Serenitatis, or we wanted them to be autonomous, to feel that they could do the exploration by themselves. So then we realized that we had developed a few tactile resources already, astronomical resources, and we decided to put them together, making a kit of accessible astronomy resources. And we included resources from other authors. So in the kit, there was the planetarium show materials, the tactile moon, some 3D models of a few constellations, and an activity book to perform activities with the elements of the kit, the tactile photo prints from Chandra's observatory, and the Little Moon Facebook by Astronomer in Greece, that you may know. We were able to conduct this project thanks to funding mainly from the IAU Office of Astronomy for Development and smaller contributions from many other organizations. We produced 30 kits that were distributed among different educators all around the world, as you can see in this map. And these are just 3 pictures of girls exploring the materials in Nepal, in Argentina, and in India. So after that, we were doing this in a very primitive way, I must say. And then a friend came up and said that he could program a software, which he called Mapilia and Friends, to create 3D models from maps. So from that moment, it became very easy for us to create tactile models from 2D maps of the solar system objects for which the space missions had already produced a full map of the body, of the celestial body. So you can read the information about the software in this link, and you can even download it. You can use it for your own projects too. You are welcome to use it, of course. Then we created another kit, a smaller one. It was just focused on Venus, and we had the tactile model of Venus, and then a book on an activity book to conduct with activities to be conducted with these materials, with the globe. And yeah, finally, we have already printed out the tactile globes of the 4 terrestrial planets plus the moon. And a few of them were featured at the Inspiring Stars exhibition, which, as probably you all know, it's an IAU traveling exhibition, which is composed of accessible astronomy resources from different authors. And I've been also involved in this project, the Sign Language Universal Encyclopedic Dictionary, to develop a comparative list of astronomical terms in different sign languages from all the world. In the first release, we published 47 terms in 31 languages. In the second release, that was published last December, we included 86 new terms. So just some final thoughts that the outreach activities using inclusive and accessible methods lead to inclusion of publics with disabilities, but also they contribute to making the activity more engaging for everyone. So they're useful for everyone. And they also improve their chances to remember the information given because they are receiving this information through different sensorial channels at the same time. This helps in keeping and developing the talents that may hide behind a disability, and it will eventually foster scientific excellence in research institutes, because we know now it has been proven that scientific excellence is closely related to diversity in the research groups. And with this, we help to contribute to build more diverse, inclusive, and fair working environments for all in astronomy and science. And I leave you with the links. Attached of the universe is the link to where you can find and you can download all the models, tactile models that I have shown in the talk. You can also download the Mapilia software, and then, well, you already know the links to the working group on astronomy for equity and inclusion, and to the Inspiring Stars site. And you have there my email address, so please feel free to contact me if you want to chat more about these things. And I will also answer your questions later in the day. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you, Amelia, for sharing your projects and even the links. And I like the line there that we can contribute in developing tools and innovations in our inclusive astronomy outreach. So we just need to think outside the box. So I hope people here are also inspired to do the same. And yeah. Anyway, moving on with our last but not the least a presentation for today. Wait. All right. So moving on with our next presentation for today, let's welcome Miss Andra Stoica. Uh, she has been a member of Astro Club Bucuresti. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. One of the oldest and most prestigious amateur astronomers association in Romania. 2 years ago, they started a beautiful project addressing or for children ages 6 to 14, an astronomy club based on online courses and public events, outdoor creative workshops, observations of the sun through telescope, evening observations, and they also have a project or a tool for the blind or visually impaired. So without further ado, let's all welcome Miss Andra Stoica.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you. I will be talking only about the project that is designed for the blind and visually impaired. Um, we also have projects for children, as Christine said, all ages and all kinds of children. But today I would like to share with you our little project which uses some materials that are not as I don't know, complicated or elaborated as you saw until now, because we started um, from such an workshop as today. We were inspired by a presentation during an online workshop for astronomy and education, and there was a poster on inclusive outreach. We got there a lot of ideas. We saw how you can work with people with disabilities, and our basic motivation is this quote from Ptolemy. I think it's the most appropriate for what we feel when we look at the sky. He said, "Mortal as I am, I know that I am born for a day, but when I follow at my pleasure the serried multitude of the stars in their circular motion on the sky, my feet no longer touch the earth." That is what we feel when we practice astronomy, and we want to share this feeling with everybody around us, especially with the ones that feel cut off and alone. As Carl Sagan said in his book In Contact, he said that you're an interesting species, an interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams and such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost, so cut off, so alone, only you're not. See, in all our searching, the only thing we found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other. That is our basic motivation, to be there for the people that feel cut off. And hopefully this loneliness will be alleviated by having a bit of normality in their life and feeling included in the society. So we started this, sorry?
Andra, the
Yeah,
slides are not
slides.
moving. Yeah. Are you moving the slides?
Uh, don't you see the third slide now?
There, yeah. We can see now. Thank you.
Okay, let me try moving it so I can be sure that now did it change?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So thank you. So about us, about Astro Clubul Bucharest, as Christine said, this is one of the oldest and one of the most prestigious amateur astronomers association in Romania. We inherited the tradition of the first Romanian Astronomy Society, founded in 1908. So we are continuing its 140 years legacy. And we carry out our activities under the name of Astro Clubul Bucharest since 1984. That was before I was born, so they are really, really old. Our main missions in our association are to support the astronomers, both amateurs and professional astronomers, and to promote astronomy amongst the public. In order to accomplish the latter one, we participate in many public events, we organize star parties, and we have developed several programs, one of which is dedicated to children, as Christine said. It's called Astro Clubul Junior, and the other projects are focusing on social inclusion, such as lectures and observation nights for children belonging to socially disadvantaged groups, such as families with low or no income, different ethnicities, children in orphanages or in remote villages. And we also have this beautiful project of astronomy for the blind and visually impaired. It's called Astronomie pentru nevăzători in Romanian. It's astronomy for the blind. The theme of this project is, at the moment, made by two people, myself and my colleague Diana Chiriță. We initiated this project 2 years ago. We are both amateur astronomers and members of Astro Clubul București. We are working with disadvantaged categories as volunteers, and Diana is a promoter of social inclusion, herself being a wheelchair person. And she's also a PR specialist, which is very, very helpful. Well, regarding the resources, I'm planning on talking about the resources we use and we develop. Mainly, we have low budget resources, being at the beginning of the project. We have a restored tactile planetarium. We have some low budget handmade resources that are made by ourselves. And we have a few bought resources, and I will present them one by one. Firstly, the tactile planetarium has a very cute story behind it. Our first idea after participating in the online workshop was to make a planetarium inside an umbrella. We called it a tactile umbrella with beads and strings. And talking about this planetarium, this umbrella idea with the manager, the coordinator of the Astronomical Observatory in Bucharest, he said that he has received an astronomical planetarium, tactile planetarium, and he was unable to expose it in the museum, and he offered it to us. This planetarium was made by Baia Mare Astronomy Science Museum as part of their project for the blind and visually impaired in 2016. They made several such domes, and they sent them to some observatories around the country. And they were such great people. They moved along all the process, and in 1 week after we discovered this precious jewel for us, we had it in our custody. And we also had the support of the Astronomical Institute of Romanian Academy, who are so nice, and they are keeping it there right now, and they allowed us to work on it in their building. As you can see in the left picture, that was the initial state we received it in. We refurbished it in 1 week, I believe. We were a team of 5 persons, and it took a week to be refurbished. Now the current state is the one on the right. We worked on its structure. It was barely holding up when we took it. We worked on the dome. We had to reissue all the constellations. They were not in a very good state when we took it. So this is the refurbished dome for tactile dome. This is its inauguration. We took it to Astrofest, which is a festival, a public festival of science and astronomy, which is held yearly. It was a success with the people that were there, but we had some difficulties with the associations and all the entities that are treating blind and visually impaired people, because they had no trust in us. They didn't know who we are. They didn't issue invitations to this event, so we had very little turnout, but we had a few participants. The good part of this refurbishing with the silver dome was the fact that it attracted a lot of people, and this was a very good thing because it helps us promote the social inclusion for the blind and visually impaired. As you can see in this picture, we have on the left a kid. He was very curious. He was partially blind, and he also had ADHD. I have to admit that for a first experience, it was very challenging, but it was nice, and I encouraged him to see all the constellations, to touch them. He even got up on his feet inside the dome, and he was very excited about this. The materials we used for the dome, the part on the cover, it's made out of cardboard hexagons and pentagons. This has the big disadvantage that it creates some lines that for some are very hard to ignore. We use staples, glue, and double adhesive tape, blue paper for the inside background, and white beaded head pins and yellow string for the constellation contour. We also used flat-headed pins for the cardinals. North and south have one pin, west and east have two pins each. And we start from the north, we guide them to the right, and we describe the constellations. The wooden structure was painted and reinforced. It has a hinge lid for the dome and the rotating chair inside. It's very economical. I think everyone can build such a dome. It doesn't take too much time to make. Of course, if you have the specialist to work on wood, luckily we had some colleagues that are very skilled with this. Other materials that we have prepared are on the same thematics of constellations. We have some cardboard pieces on which we have some thick string, and it's here in the picture I put constellation Draco. We use some cork plates with distance of the stars in a constellation, how we can perceive it on the sky and how far they really are, or in 3D. We also use planets on a string. We have some felted wood spheres for demonstrating the distances between the planets. We use around 10 centimeters of strings for one astronomical unit. This is a moon sample. It's not even close to what Amelia showed. This is made from air dry clay. It's just a sample of a crater and a little mountain on the side, so that they can see that it's not flat. We also use this very cute project. We inflate a balloon on which we have sticked some cardboard stars and comets, and the expansion of the universe and the way the objects move one from each other in the universe. We have some tactile printed sheets with the planets, with the expansion of the universe, with galaxies. I'm sorry. Okay, so we use this tactile sheets. This also have some description in Braille. Now I'm getting to the part of the both materials. This is a solar system orrery. We can demonstrate the movement of planets in our solar system, or the movement of the moon around our Earth. And I'm quickly getting to the last part of my presentation, because today we're talking about best practices. I wrote down some ideas from our experience in this almost second year of our experience. We have made some mistakes. I have made some mistakes. I at first, being eager to serve the persons that were coming to the planetarium, I made a mistake of positive discrimination, which is still discrimination and is still disturbing. So don't do this. I did it. It's not okay. More than that, we have learned, Diana had actually had experience with some events where she was invited, and when she got there, she had not the facilities needed and in accordance with the type of event promoted. So when issuing an invite, especially to a combined event, which is not necessarily dedicated to persons with disability, you should enumerate all the dedicated materials you are going to use. Ask ask the users for feedback. This, I think, is one of the most important points on this slide. They can give you feedback on the materials, on your behavior, on manner of speech. Of course, you are prepared when you are starting to do this. Of course, you read before that, but their opinion is the best feedback that you can get. There's always room for improvement. We have learned, for example, about the differences in perception between people that are born with the disability, with being blind, and people who have developed this disability in time, over time, and it led to total blindness. For them, it's harder to compose a mental image only using a the tactile sense, and it takes a bit longer because they still remember images and they still have a mentally visual reference, and it's harder for them to compose the image based on the tactile object they are touching. What I have wrote down here is something, again, from our experience. Do not expect to be welcomed or supported at first by the official institutions or associations. In our experience, only from the second year, they are starting to trust you and to be more open to your initiatives. We have seen that now. The same associations that last year were very reluctant at our proposals, now they had a major change of attitude, and they are very excited to come and participate to our event. We are going to be having in May a public event, and they are very, very excited to send people to our planetarium. Maybe I think I want to end this presentation with the best feedback that I got in this activity. When I was in the dome with a user, I was guiding him to jump to the next constellation, and he said, wait, I'm just starting to see this one, and I'm remembering how it was looking on the sky. That was the most emotional moment that I lived. It gave me instant goosebumps, and that was the moment I realized what an impact we have for these people and in their lives. And I think this is actually the best motivation that we can get from this kind of events and activities and working with these people. So hopefully we can give this idea to some more of you that are here today. more information about the resources, the very low budget resources, I can send you an email. You will have also my email at the end of the presentation. And as I think this quote is the most appropriate for the end of this presentation. As Lina said, our motto is astronomy is for everyone. And Krista McAuliffe said, which is a teacher and an astronaut, said that space is for everybody. It's not just for a few people in science or math or for a select group of astronauts. That's our new frontier out there, and it's everybody's business to know about space. And thank you so much. Here is my my email address if you want to note it and ask me for resources or guidance material. Thank you so much.
All right. So thank you, Andra, for that wonderful presentation. So I think we can go now to our question and answer portion. So we have about 8 minutes for our questions. And Amelia already has a question here in our comment section. So I think this is for every one of us. And anyone can answer this. So this lack of trust is a problem we all have encountered with the blind associations. How can we overcome it? So Andra or anyone would like to answer that? Oh, sorry, my dog is acting. Okay. Okay, so
Okay.
anyone? Go, Andra.
Okay, I can answer this. They are justified to have this lack of trust because they have, at least in Romania, I know they had some bad experiences. As I said, they were invited to several events with promising activities, and when they got there, they realized that it was not like it was presented. It was false publicity. So we treated this. We kept in touch with some of our the persons we used to work with, and they promoted us very much in their communities. We promoted our activities online very much, and we shared in their communities so they can see, and apparently they gain trust in us, and they will invite us to more activities. They are searching us now. Hopefully this can happen in any country. As I said, at least here in Romania, they are justified to be a bit reluctant at first.
All right.
If I can add
Go
that,
ahead.
if I can add that the Italian experience is similar to what Andra said. Basically, you build the trust bottom up. You work with blind people, the voice goes around, and actually, we got to the point where we were sponsored by the Italian Blind Association with the European Blind Association, and we, as the IAU group, actually ended up with being publishing an article on the European Blind Union newsletter, inviting national associations to participate. So, I mean, this can be helpful if you have problems with, at least in Europe, national associations. Maybe with our group, we can facilitate somehow.
All right. So thank you. Yeah, I think it's also the same with the Philippines. So we need to include them in the planning stage at the very beginning of the project. Anyway, everyone can open your camera so that we can see your pretty faces. Any more questions for our other presenters, for Exodus or for Amelia? Luigi, you're raising your hand. Okay. Any more questions? So Amelia provided the links of her projects, and Andra will also can also send the links for the blueprints. By the way, Amelia is asking if you can share the blueprints of the tactile planetarium, Andra.
Yes, I was just writing an answer in chat right now. I would send the blueprints of the planetarium, and we can even post them on IAU page
Okay.
at the resources
Okay.
section.
Thank you.
Okay.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you. I would also be interested in that as well.
Chris, I don't have a question, but if I can share a couple of thoughts, let me know when I can.
Sure, sure. You can go ahead, Cesare.
Okay, thanks. Being in this group for a while, I think the call today was very, it points out some of key aspects. One is the collaboration between professional and amateurs in this field. We have seen a presentation from Amelia, who is a professional astronomer, from Andra, who is an amateur astronomer, from Exodus, who is a professional outreach person, and each one with our own peculiarity, we contribute and work together. Usually you see that the tools from amateurs are much cheaper, for instance. The other thing is the importance of co-creation. Both Andra, Amelia, and also Exodus pointed out how many things came up working with the people with disability, with their feedback, with their input. So this is very important. It's also the way to build the trust and to do the right things. We cannot assume we can teach them. We have to learn from them at the end. We are learning a new language, and they can teach us. And the other very important thing that Amelia mentioned is the value of these resources, of these activities for people with no disabilities. So they are great teaching tools because in many cases we deal with the spatial concepts like the motion of planets in space and so on. So having models to show that instead of books or PowerPoint is great with everyone, not just with people with disabilities. So those were the thoughts that came up as people were speaking, and I thought it was worth sharing. And the final one is the invitation not to be afraid, not to be scared. It's like when you learn a new language, right? When I learned English at the beginning, my first problem was to try to speak because I was afraid of making mistakes. But making mistakes is normal. That's what I learned. And actually, the tools we are providing is a way to reduce the fear, to make people more comfortable, have the basic tools, and get started. And the word is the feedback. What Andra said, she mentioned an emotional feedback. I can mention what I found most emotional in my experience for this, which is when a person she was born blind, and she was so happy because she finally understood what sunset and sunrise mean. Now, it's something very basic that we have for a given. And when you hear something who is in her between 30 and 40 years, and that's when she learned about sunrise and sunset, it's something you feel happy about. So that's all. That's were my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cesare, for that. We're running out of time, so before we end this, everyone who can open their camera, please open your camera so that we can take a quick photo for our documentation for today. Um, Anyone, or are we all okay? I'll take a photo in the count of three. So, all right. So one. Oops. People are opening their cameras. Okay, okay. All right. So in one, two, three, smile. Okay. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. This is the first webinar of a series, so we will try to make this quarterly. So expect another webinar for I think it's July, if I'm not mistaken. And if you want to present, please let us know if you have any ideas or presentation in mind. Let us know, and we will also post a call for presentation for the next webinar if you're also an outreach practitioner in your countries. So again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day to all of you.